I'm Alex Skleros. It's just under 2 weeks until the general election, and I'm here in Witney to talk to the Liberal Democrat candidate for Oxfordshire, for West Oxfordshire and Witney, about what the Lib Dems offer this constituency. So thanks for joining me, Charlotte.
Well, thank you for having me.
So I guess the first question is, why would you want to be an MP?
Well, I'm Charlotte Hoagland. I'm the Lib Dem parliamentary candidate for Witney. I would like to be an MP because I feel it's very important to stand up and represent people.
Okay.
And especially in a constituency where I think they haven't been well represented. It's about time that we got some fresh blood.
Okay. And why the Liberal Democrats? What can you offer?
So I've grown up with Shirley Williams and Bob McLennan. So I really grew up with the Liberal Democrats. I remember marching with Charles Kennedy against the Iraq War. I really think that they stand true to their values. I think they care about the environment, they care about education, they care about the NHS and social care. They really care about people and making sure that people have the best opportunity that they face every day.
Okay. And when you're out canvassing, what is the biggest issue that people are talking to you about on the doorstep?
Probably Brexit.
Okay. All right.
This is a Remain constituency, and we have an extreme Brexiteer MP from the European Research Group, and a lot of them tell me that they just feel that he's not listening to them. And rightly so. He is on the Leave camp, and I'm on the Remain camp. And I think it's very important we give it back to the people and give them a people's vote. In fact, instead of having this election, we should have been having a people's vote.
Okay, so just to clear this up, the Liberal Democrats as a party are no longer campaigning to revoke Article 50 if they win a majority, is that correct?
If we win a majority, in terms of whether Joe becomes Prime Minister or not, I think realistically the Lib Dems have understood that people want a people's vote, so we want to campaign for that.
Okay, is that what the party is saying as a whole, or is that just your personal position?
Well, it's a bit of both. I mean, definitely, I think what matters is the constituency that you represent, and they are telling me they want a people's vote. So if I have to stand up to Jo if she was the Prime Minister, I would gladly stand up to her and say, sorry, Jo, in Witney, my constituents want a people's vote. Okay. And I've worked for MPs who have stood up to the party and the party whip on things where there were differences, such as in Caithness, where I worked for one of our MPs. We had a nuclear reactor, and the party was very anti-nuclear. But my boss knew that the amount of jobs that nuclear plant brought to a rural community were so much more important than the party's stance on nuclear. So I've had the experience of working for people, and I would follow suit. Okay, all right. So you would be prepared to stand up to the whip? Absolutely. Okay.
What is the biggest risk when it comes to Brexit to constituents in Witney and West Oxfordshire?
So right now we have frictionless borders between us and the European Union, and we've seen the consequences of Brexit. There was a local florist, Rosa, in Witney, and she went out of business in part because of the plummeting value of the pound.
Right.
And she imported a lot of flowers from Holland. And you think about the NHS in terms of the workforce that we have here, a lot of them are Europeans. We've lost them, and we haven't been replacing the workforce that we're losing out on.
We'll move on from Brexit, but you mentioned the fact that there was a lot of misinformation. I just want to ask quickly, what do you think about the standard of public debate in the UK at the moment? Does it need to change?
I do think it needs to change. I think more people, because what it's become very polarized. So people are either one side or the other, and we're not listening to each other. And I would like to see more listening. I think that's something that would be much better, because just shouting the way we do, it's like child's play.
Right.
And this is real life. This is the consequences that for the legislation that we pass in the House of Commons and the House of Lords will have an impact on everyone's life.
Okay. That's great, and actually as a segue, talking about things that have an impact on everyone's lives, there are certain issues here that I'd like to know a little bit about your stance on. So one of them has been brought up on the Today programme a couple of days ago, that other MPs in Oxfordshire talking about housing, whether we should be building affordable housing, where we should be building it. What do you think about that?
Well, we definitely need affordable housing, but I want to make sure that it is really truly affordable housing, because the amount of housing that is left empty, these 4 or 5 bedrooms that we are building here, they're not affordable. And I want to make sure that they're also insulated, because that will help us address the climate emergency that we're facing.
Right.
But again, they must be done in, we put the cart before the horse when they went and did the building of these houses. They just threw houses and sort of corners were cut. And I really think that the house building individuals need to be held accountable.
Okay.
Instead of basically being given free rein on where they will put houses. Because if you're putting in big mega mansion type housing in a small village, that's not really very effective.
Okay.
Whether you have more of the kind of merit style apartment flats, I think is quite a good idea.
Yep.
But again, you need to look at what you're putting in a village before you go ahead and do it, rather than just, okay, we're going to put in it. But they must be affordable, like really affordable housing, because they're not.
Right. Okay. And so moving on from that. So say that you get a grant or a plan together to build more affordable housing in this constituency. What does that mean? What effect does that have on the rest of the infrastructure in the constituency? The schools, the roads, that are going to need to support, more people living.
Well, so that's the other thing. We have to look at the infrastructure needs before we're building these houses. So we do need to fix our roads. We do need to fix our public transport. I would like to see a lot more cars off of the roads and have more electric buses as well as light rail.
Okay.
We have the infrastructure. We have some of the infrastructure there. I think if we can build on that, it will be much better, because then we won't have overcrowding at our schools. We won't have the numbers that we're seeing where we don't have enough teachers, because again, then where the teacher's going to live, because the housing is too expensive for them, so they have to commute in, and the added congestion on the A40, it hasn't been addressed for years.
Yes.
So let's look at the infrastructure, and again, let's make a plan.
Okay, yes.
Let's have a plan in place, but let's also talk to the local community. What would they like to see? Because they're going to have to live with this.
Okay, all right. And what makes your plan when it comes to infrastructure better than, say, the Labour Party, who are pledging something like in the realm of £400 billion overall in infrastructure? I think Lib Dems are pledging something like 130. Obviously, there's a big gap there. Why, when it comes to, if the answer is we need to spend more on infrastructure, why is your plan better?
So we want to make sure that we are addressing the congestion and the climate emergency. So by our investing more in public transport, electric vehicles by 2030, we want to make sure that all houses are insulated, but also that we have electric trains. Because if you have light rail, but have it be reliable rail. None of this, it's supposed to be here at this hour, but it's not showing up. So we have to make sure that. But doing long-term investment that the Liberal Democrats are doing, it's not a short-term game.
Right.
We will see long-term benefits by putting in this money now, and it will help. We will get more cars off and if we have electrical vehicles as opposed to diesel vehicles, that will also help. And in Witney, I'm very fortunate to be working with the Green Party, who have kindly stepped aside in this election. But we're working together on how we can really tackle this climate emergency. And they don't want to see more vehicles on the road.
No.
But also, with Labour, they were advocating for more cycling lanes. Well, we have a mixed population here. We have a lot of sort of not the some retirement age as well as young families, but you wouldn't ask the retirement folk to all learn all of a sudden how to ride a bike. That wouldn't be very effective. No. But also you have small villages like the Bartons, where when they lost their stagecoach bus, they came together as a community and created our Bartons bus. And I love that community spirit. And I think the Lib Dems will be, by investing as much as we are in infrastructure, we are basically, keeping these community buses going.
What would you say you could do as an MP to make life more affordable for young people growing up in this constituency who want to then stay in this constituency beyond, say, providing affordable housing?
So I want to make sure that education is affordable, but also I want to make sure that they can get onto the housing ladder, because there's a lot of young families that want to stay nearby their parents, but they cannot afford this housing. But I also want to make it an environment that is, young person friendly. Instead of them constantly going to Oxford for all the activities, I would love them to stay in Witney or Carterton or Chipping Norton.
Right.
So provide more local activities. And again, that needs to be funded. So I would like to have some more local, give more funding to local government, so that they have more power to basically regulate what activities we can offer the young people, to encourage them to, stay locally.
What kind of activities are you thinking about? Is this in terms of leisure facilities? What sort of thing?
Well, I think leisure facilities. We do have a cinema in Witney, but also, sort of whether. So the Lib Dems, for instance, want to plant 60 million trees a year. I think on a weekend we can try to get young people to plant some trees. as a community involvement
Right.
and socializing, more socializing events, because what I don't really want is I don't want people stuck inside playing video games all day. I really think it's important for society to be engaging. I do like the farmers market, and I think supporting that is great. And I think if young entrepreneurs feel that this is a place they can start their business, and that's terrific. So if we give more funding for entrepreneurs or small business,
Yep.
which is something that the Lib Dems are trying to do. We are trying to be the party of business. I think that will encourage people because they'll have ideas, and then they'll know, okay, I can actually try this idea out in Witney,
Okay.
and I will get the funding I
Right.
need.
Okay. I can cut. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So.
So using their passion and their focus of an idea or an interest, bringing that into life, real life, as a job or a business.
Jo Swinson stood up at her CGI speech and said that the Liberal Democrats are going to be the natural party of business because you're a pro-Remain party.
Yep.
What else can you do for small businesses in this constituency?
So I think we need to address the VAT levels because I think that they are quite high. But also, and again, another VAT related thing is climate related, in the sense that if we can reduce the VAT on an electric vehicle from 20% to 5%, I think that would be very terrific because the cost of an electric vehicle will come down. But going back to business, no, we are the party for business. We're not throwing money at it left and right the way that the Tories are doing. We are approachable. When we were in government with the Tories, we were actually very, the economy was growing, and I basically credit our MPs for that.
Okay. So just to go back to that, you think that the economic growth under the coalition government was due to the Liberal Democrat
Yes.
MPs?
Yes, I think we made a huge. So Vince Cable, who was our business secretary, made huge amounts of strides for business for the Liberal, and really showed the business community that the Liberal Democrats are willing to listen to their needs and their concerns. And again, going back to Brexit, this uncertainty is not what small business or any business needs. Whether it's the workforce or the frictionless trade, these are things that businesses are looking at, and they have to have, to make their margins meet, and to hit their targets, they need that trade. And right now we have the best free trade agreement, and that's with the European Union.
So far in the interview, we've talked a lot about Liberal Democrat domestic policy. Now let's talk a little bit about foreign policy. In your manifesto, it says that the Liberal Democrat government would be able or willing to provide military intervention where it's either legal or where either a legal or humanitarian cause exists.
Yeah.
That struck me as a little bit odd, just because a lot of Liberal Democrats opposed the Iraq War, where you could say that there was no legal precedent, but there was a humanitarian one. So, would you say intervene in Syria, where there's no legal precedent, but there is a humanitarian? Cool.
So with the Iraq War, obviously there was a humanitarian crisis, and while it was illegal, there were no weapons of mass destruction. I still stand with my party stance against the Iraq War. Regarding Syria, I think one, I would need to see a little bit more information. But again, as a member of NATO, if NATO is going to put a military force together, the UK can, instead of sending troops, supportive NATO troops, we can actually give money so that we can bring down an administration that is doing inhumane things to its civilians.
Which parliamentarian do you most admire?
Well, to be fair, my mentor is Shirley Williams. I think she was a strong woman. What she went from Labour to the SDP, to the Liberal Democrat Party, I think she really envisaged what a true politician should be, someone who listens, someone who cares. I also think Charles Kennedy was a great listener.
Yep.
Obviously he had his flaws, and no one is perfect, but I think he was that kind of person that if you were in a crowd, it wouldn't matter how big it was, you were the only one that he was focused on talking to. And I think he was a very good parliamentarian. I think he worked very hard. I'm afraid there's a bit of a list. I have some great admiration for a lot of our Lib Dem MPs.
That's okay. How about give us one more? Make it 3.
Let's make it 3, sure. So my former boss, John Thurso, as I said previously, what I admired about him was that he was willing to stand up to the party and the whip's office for things like the nuclear reactor position, where he stood up for his constituents, and he really put constituents first. And I think that's the kind of MP I would be. I would be listening to the Witney constituents whether they be Leave or Remainers, whether they be rich or poor, students or otherwise. I would want to make sure that they feel that they can come to me and listen and be heard.
Right. Okay. What are the issues that get you really fired up? Give me one policy that you feel like exists that needs to be repealed, and one that you think desperately needs introduced.
Very good question. Well, so can we count Brexit as that?
Of course.
I very much want to stop Brexit,
Right.
but I don't want to repeal it. I want to put the vote back to the people. Have another referendum, because technically, and it wouldn't be a second referendum, technically it would be a third, because if you count 1975 when we voted to go in,
Okay.
it would be a third. And in Ireland, they voted 3 times on the Lisbon Treaty.
Mm-hmm.
So what's wrong with 3? And then the second question was...
What do you think? Presumably that's the thing that desperately needs to be repealed.
Yes.
What desperately needs to be introduced?
Well, I think we need to do more about affordable housing and really making it legally binding. That let's give more power to local government so that they can hold to account the housing builders.
Right. Okay. Can I actually just push you on the referendum point?
Yes.
When does it become? How many referenda do you have to hold before they cease to have? Before you get the final verdict?
Well, as someone who was against the second one, I hope we don't have to do any more after this. To be honest, I think if we have one final one, make it legally binding. If it is leave, then we leave.
Right. So to finish off, just a few quick fire questions. Favourite film?
007, You Only Live Twice, James Bond.
Okay. Favourite novel?
Order of the Phoenix, Harry Potter.
Right. And the most important one, Marmite, yes or no?
Absolutely, I'm a
Okay.
big Marmite fan.
Brilliant. Charlotte, thank you very much for doing
Thank
this.
you very much.